My name is Tammy, and I am the same age I was when I agreed to help pay for my sister's wedding. 3 days before the wedding, my sister messaged me. Still waiting on the last two gifts. Don't show your face without them. No hello, no thank you. Just a command, like I was late on rent. 15 minutes later, my mom called and said it out loud. Sharper, colder. If you were real family, you'd complete the list. I didn't reply. I didn't argue. I didn't even feel angry. It was just quiet. The kind of quiet where something finally clicks into place. 6 months earlier, I was the one who agreed to help. That was the word they used. Help. I covered the venue deposit without hesitation, paid the catering advance, booked the photographer, coordinated vendors when they didn't answer calls. I even surprised them with a 2-week honeymoon to Hawaii, flights, resort, excursions, all under my name. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because that's what I'd always done. I thought this was what family looked like when it worked. Then came the gift list. 10 items. 5 were normal enough. Espresso machine, vacuum, matching robes, wine set. I bought all 5 within a week. Didn't question it. The last 2 stopped me cold. A Rolex and a new car. No price range. No discussion. Just expectation. I assumed it was a mistake until my sister confirmed it wasn't. She said a luxury watch and a car would elevate the aesthetic. That was the word she used. Aesthetic. I told her it wasn't happening. She laughed and said she hoped the venue was refundable. I didn't react then either. I just took note. 2 weeks before the wedding, she gave a toast at a small family gathering, thanked her fiancé's parents for making everything possible, for being so generous. She never mentioned me. Not the venue, not the planning, not the trip. Nothing. Later that night, her fiancé joked loud enough for people to hear that tech money should be good for more than laptops if I really cared. Everyone laughed except me. That night, I sat alone in my apartment with my laptop open and reread every contract. I canceled the venue and told them to keep the deposit, paused the catering, froze the remaining payments. Then I canceled the 5 gifts I'd already purchased. The last thing I did was text my sister. Venue and catering are no longer covered. You'll need to make other arrangements. Then I turned off my phone. By morning, I had 29 missed calls, and that was only the beginning. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, it vibrated nonstop in my hand like it was angry at me for ignoring it. 29 missed calls. Voicemails stacked so tightly they blurred together. Texts from numbers I hadn't saved anymore. I didn't listen to the first few right away. I already knew what they'd say. Panic always sounds the same when it realizes it's been cut off. The first voicemail I finally played was my sister. She was screaming, breathless, words tumbling over each other, doors slamming in the background. She kept saying my name like she was trying to grab me through the phone. The second was my mom, crying or pretending to cry, asking how I could betray blood like this during the most important moment of my sister's life. The third was my dad, pure rage, asking if I understood what I'd done to my own family. Then the line went dead with a click-like punctuation. I didn't respond to any of them. By noon, the tone shifted. My dad called again, this time using the voice he only used when something expensive was at risk. Calm, controlled, reasonable. He said I'd made my point, and that now we should talk like adults. He said it wasn't too late to fix this. Fix. That word again. Like I was the problem that needed adjusting. What none of them understood yet was that I wasn't trying to make a point. I was finished. The real unraveling didn't start with my family. It started with the groom's side. Up until that moment, his parents believed they were hosting the wedding. My sister and her fiancé had told them everything was being handled by his family, that the luxury venue, the catering, even the honeymoon were their gift, quietly done to avoid tension. It was a neat story, one that worked as long as no one looked too closely. When the venue canceled and the catering froze with no backup, the groom's parents finally asked the question they should have asked months earlier. Where did the money go? I didn't hear about it directly at first. I heard it through silence, through the way the calls multiplied, through the way my sister stopped yelling and started disappearing. Then, that afternoon, I got a message from the groom's mother. I'd only spoken to her twice before. Polite conversations, surface level. Her message was careful, almost apologetic. She said she thought there had been a huge misunderstanding and asked if we could talk. I didn't answer. She sent another message anyway, this time with a screenshot attached. A group chat full of frantic messages, cousins, aunts, people asking why vendors were backing out and who was actually paying for what. My name was everywhere, repeated like a typo no one could erase. The illusion collapsed in real time, and suddenly everyone was staring at the hole where the truth should have been. That evening, my uncle called, one of the few people in my family who'd never asked me for money or favors. He didn't ask why I did it. He just said he wasn't surprised. He said the groom's dad was demanding answers, that my sister was having a meltdown, and that things were getting ugly fast. Then he said something that stayed with me. It was going to happen eventually. I'm just surprised it took you this long. By nightfall, the strategy shifted again. The groom's father stepped in. He offered to replace every dollar I pulled so the wedding could go on, but not as a gift, as a loan, every cent documented. Repayment due within 3 months, no grace period, no forgiveness clause. If his son wanted a $60,000 wedding, he would wear the debt himself. From what I heard later, the fiancé wasn't thrilled, but he signed. There wasn't another option. Guests were already flying in. The date was locked. The damage was public now. The wedding was technically back on, but the foundation they'd built it on was gone. And me, I was already out. Once the loan was in place and the wedding was technically saved, something strange happened. The noise around me shifted. The calls slowed. The messages became shorter, colder, more careful. It wasn't relief, it was calculation. Everyone was trying to figure out where to place the blame now that the truth had slipped out. I stopped thinking about the venue and the catering. Those were gone, and I'd already decided not to fight over the deposit. I wanted the exit to be clean. But the rest of it, the gifts, the honeymoon, the things I'd paid for under my name, those were still mine. And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. I called the travel agency that afternoon, explained that I was canceling the Hawaii trip. The agent asked if I wanted a refund or credit. I said credit. I didn't know when I'd use it, only that I would. After that, I contacted the stores handling the other gifts. The espresso machine, the robotic vacuum, the glassware set, all canceled or rerouted. A few items were already in transit, but I changed the delivery address to my apartment. Anything that couldn't be refunded, I listed online and sold within hours. It felt transactional, not emotional, like undoing a series of clerical errors. Word spread fast. My mom left a long voicemail accusing me of embarrassing the family, of shaming my sister at the worst possible time. She said people were talking. She said this would follow us forever. I didn't respond. A cousin messaged asking if it was true that I was taking the gifts back. I replied with one word, yes. After that, the questions stopped. Behind the scenes, my sister was still trying to control the narrative. She told friends and extended family that the groom's parents were footing everything and that I'd barely been involved. But once the fallout hit, people started connecting the dots. Vendors didn't cancel for no reason. Honeymoons don't vanish by accident. Someone always knows who paid. And suddenly, a lot of people realized they'd been lied to. The wedding didn't disappear, but it shrank. The new venue was cheaper, farther out, nowhere near what had been planned. Catering switched to a buffet. Decorations were scaled back. The guest list was quietly trimmed. I saw photos from a distance, sent by people who didn't know what to say to me anymore. My sister kept calling it intimate online. I knew better. At some point during all of this, my name was removed from the guest list. No message, no explanation, just gone. Scrubbed from the seating chart, the group chats, the planning threads, like I'd never existed in the first place. I expected it to hurt. I waited for that familiar ache, the one that came with being erased. It never came. Instead, there was relief, a strange, steady calm. The wedding would happen without me. That had always been the plan, whether they admitted it or not. Now it was just honest. And for the first time since all of this started, I realized I didn't miss being included in something that only valued me for what I could pay. The morning of the wedding, I slept in. No alarms, no frantic texts asking me to fix something last minute. No guilt sitting on my chest telling me I was letting everyone down. I made coffee slowly and stood by the window of my apartment, watching the street wake up like it was any other Saturday. Somewhere across town, my sister was probably pacing, adjusting a dress that didn't quite feel the same without the version of the wedding she'd imagined. Somewhere else, vendors were improvising, filling gaps where money used to be. None of it touched me. That day felt like I'd skipped my own execution. Photos started trickling in from people who didn't know what to do with me anymore. The new venue was fine, technically. A renovated community space dressed up with fairy lights and rented linens. The buffet trays were stainless steel instead of porcelain. The band had been replaced by a playlist. The guest count looked smaller than expected. My sister was still smiling in every photo, but the smile looked tighter, like it was holding something back. I figured that was it. The wedding would happen. People would clap. They'd post filtered pictures. The story would be rewritten one more time, and I'd fade into the background where they wanted me. I went about my afternoon assuming the worst was over. Then my phone buzzed. One of my cousins texted, "They're talking about you." Another message followed seconds later. "Check Facebook. You're in the speech." I didn't respond. I just opened the app and searched for the first story I could find from someone at the reception. The audio was muffled at first. Background noise, clinking glasses, laughter. Then a man's voice cut through, calm and deliberate. I recognized him immediately from the one planning call I'd been on months ago. The groom's uncle, David. Quiet, observant, the kind of person who doesn't speak unless he means it. He raised his glass and said he'd been listening to a lot of praise that night, and that was fine. It was a wedding. Then he paused, long enough to make people uncomfortable. He said, "But let's not ignore the elephant in the room. None of this would have happened without someone who isn't here." You could hear chairs shift. He looked straight toward the camera. "Tammy, the sister who paid for everything you didn't see today. The venue, the honeymoon, the gifts." A murmur ran through the room. He didn't stop. "She pulled out, yes, but only after being disrespected in a way no one here should defend." The silence was heavy enough to hear silverware drop. He raised his glass higher. "Some of you were told stories. Now you know the truth." Then simply, "To Tammy." There were a few claps, awkward ones, a couple of nervous laughs. Then the video cut, but I didn't need to see the rest. My phone started lighting up almost immediately. Messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Short ones, careful ones. Some apologetic, some just stunned. According to another cousin who called me later that night, my sister left halfway through dessert. The groom looked furious but trapped, smiling through it like his jaw was clenched shut. His mother apparently leaned over to someone and said, "At least one person in this family has integrity." The words traveled faster than any rumor. I set my phone down and sat in the quiet of my apartment, letting it all land. I wasn't there. I hadn't wanted to be. And somehow I was still the center of the moment they tried so hard to erase me from. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning I woke up to an email from the honeymoon resort. The subject line was neutral, almost polite. It said there had been an attempted check-in under my name 2 days earlier, and that no reservation existed. They wanted to confirm there hadn't been a system error. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, then laughed out loud, alone in my kitchen. After everything, after the yelling, the lies, the theatrics, my sister and her new husband had still shown up, assuming I wouldn't actually follow through. That I'd cave at the last second, that I'd swallow it for the sake of appearances. According to the note, they caused a scene, demanded a manager, insisted it must be a mistake. When the staff refused, they flagged the account and sent me the heads up as a courtesy. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The confirmation was enough. 3 days after the wedding, a cousin I barely spoke to messaged me. She said not everyone bought the act, that people were uncomfortable. Then she sent a short video clip recorded during a post-wedding brunch at my parents' house. My mom, my sister, the groom's family, all sitting around a table, pretending the weekend had gone perfectly. My sister was talking about how exhausting it all was, how she'd had to hold everything together. Then she laughed and said, "Honestly, it's probably better Tammy wasn't involved. She's just too intense with money." Someone else spoke up, a man I'd never met, one of the groom's relatives. "I don't know," he said. "From what I heard, if Tammy hadn't been involved at all, there wouldn't have even been a wedding to save." The table went quiet. My sister let out a thin laugh, the kind that doesn't know where to go. No one corrected him. Later that week, the groom's uncle, David, called me from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. He said he meant every word of that toast, and that a lot of people there felt the same way. He told me that after the wedding, several of the groom's relatives confronted his nephew privately, asked why he let the lie stand, why he let me take the fall. They didn't like the answers. The loan his father offered wasn't symbolic anymore, it was being enforced. Repayments started immediately. Access to a family fund was cut off. Consequences finally had weight. My mom tried to intervene. She called the groom's parents and told them I'd been unstable lately, that they shouldn't take what I did personally. That conversation didn't go how she expected. They told her they stood by me, and that maybe if she had done the same, none of this would have happened. I wasn't on the guest list. I wasn't at the brunch. But somehow, I was still the truth they couldn't talk around. Messages started coming in quietly after that. Not public, not performative. A groomsman I'd never met said he admired what I did. A distant cousin told me she returned her gift because she couldn't stomach the story anymore. None of it changed my family's behavior officially. They still pretended nothing happened. But behind closed doors, the story had shifted. I wasn't the one who ruined the wedding. I was the one who refused to be used. 2 weeks later, my mom called me for the first time since everything blew up. No apology, no acknowledgement. She asked if I could help her fill out an insurance form online. I helped her. Then I changed my number. My dad emailed something vague about time healing wounds and family coming back together. I didn't reply. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the version of me he preferred. That version didn't exist anymore. I booked the Hawaii trip for myself, solo. I left my phone on airplane mode the entire time. I hiked quiet trails, sat on beaches until the sun disappeared, ate when I was hungry, slept when I was tired. I didn't think about the wedding once. On the last night, sitting by the water, I realized I hadn't lost a sister. I'd lost the lie that kept me tied to people who only noticed me when it benefited them. When I came home, my life felt smaller in the best way, quieter, cleaner. People around me asked how I was and actually waited for the answer. When I said no, they didn't punish me. When I said yes, it felt like a choice. My parents still reach out sometimes, usually when they need something. My sister hasn't spoken to me once since the wedding, not a word. And that silence, more than anything else, finally told the truth. When I got back from Hawaii, the first thing I noticed was how little I felt pulled in any direction. No countdowns, no favors disguised as expectations, no background hum of guilt telling me to check my phone just in case someone needed something. My apartment felt different, like it finally belonged to me instead of being a waiting room for other people's emergencies. I started therapy not because I was broken, but because I wanted language for what had happened. For years, I'd been taught that love looked like usefulness, that showing up meant paying up, that saying no was the same thing as abandonment. Saying those thoughts out loud was uncomfortable, but necessary. Once they were named, they lost power. I stopped rehearsing explanations in my head. I stopped imagining conversations I was never going to have. My parents still reached out occasionally, always practical, always about a form, a password, a question they could have Googled. Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I didn't. The difference was that my response no longer came from fear of punishment. It came from choice. My dad sent another message a month later about how families always find their way back. I read it once and archived it. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the role I'd played for him. That role had been retired. People around me changed too. Friends stopped apologizing for asking for help. They asked, waited, accepted the answer. When I said yes, it felt clean. When I said no, nothing collapsed. That was new. That was everything. I never got an apology from my sister. Not a text, not a call, not even a half-hearted excuse. And oddly, that made things clearer. Her silence wasn't a punishment. It was an admission. It told me exactly how conditional her version of family had been. I stopped checking to see if she'd reached out. I stopped wondering what she told people. The story didn't belong to her anymore. Months passed. Life filled in around the absence. Work, dinners with friends, quiet mornings. I didn't miss the chaos. I didn't miss being needed for the wrong reasons. I missed nothing that required me to shrink. One evening, I found an old photo on my phone from years ago. A holiday table, crowded with people, everyone smiling, my chair pulled in close to the edge. I stared at it and realized something that should have been obvious all along. I had always been on the edge. The only thing that changed was that I finally stopped pretending it was the center. I didn't ruin a wedding. I didn't betray a family. I stepped out of a story where my value was measured in receipts and silence. I chose myself without asking permission. And when I did, everything else fell into place. I don't know what my sister tells people now. I don't know how my parents explain my absence. I don't need to. The truth doesn't require maintenance. It just exists. I'm not waiting to be invited anymore. I build my own table. I choose who sits with me. And for the first time, there's room to breathe.